Hey there, villagers. Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for a video channel. And this is a missing persons segment. So we're going to be covering topics related to missing people and talk about a couple of very interesting cases. So I usually start the segment by reading a few letters. I am Dave Paulides. This is my video channel. I have a little over 300 videos here. People who don't know me well, I've written almost 14 books now, 3 on Bigfoot and 11 on missing people. And all of the missing people cases fit a specific profile that we've developed over the years. We don't investigate all missing people, but the ones that fit the profile, we do. Now, just had a real interesting conversation with Joe Hauser over at the Montana Vortex. Just had dinner with him. And one of the things that Joe and I always talk about, and you hear me talking about him a lot because he's a smart guy. He's got a lot of unusual stuff going on at the Vortex. And I've told you before, if you go there, ask him to see some of the pictures that he's taken. There's many things at the Vortex that parallel what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch. And I've talked about this before. And I've also explained that exactly across the highway from the Vortex is Columbia Mountain. Columbia Mountain sits just above Columbia Falls, Montana. And there is a missing persons case right there on top of that mountain. I covered it in Missing 411 Montana. So yes, there's strange stuff that goes on around there all the time. So, but Joe and I always talk about Skinwalker Ranch. He's got a few new instruments to measure different things at his facility. And he's always open to talking to anybody about it. I would encourage you to go on a tour and afterwards just ask to talk to him privately. And Joe's a wealth of information on a multitude of topics and just a real gentleman. So anyhow, back to missing people. Let's start with the first letter. Hey Dave, first I'd like to say how sorry I am about the loss of your son. I've lost both my parents and my first husband, but the loss of a child has got to be the hardest loss of all. But I have faith that we will see those we have lost again. I've lost a parent, and I've lost a child. And when I lost my mom, it was a very slow progressing cancer that took her life. Multiple myeloma. At the time it took her life, it was very, very rare. It's gotten to be more common. But I saw my mom progress from an absolutely gorgeous lady to someone who was very small, frail, and horrific. And when she died, it was time for her to go. It was very easy to accept. But loss of a son, it's devastating. I'm new to the village and trying to catch up. I'm reading the books and enjoying watching the videos and hearing the letters from other villagers. I haven't watched a lot of the older videos yet, so what I suggest might have already been out there before. So, my videos are somewhat timeless because they're about cases that have happened. Well, obviously it had to have happened for it to be a case. So, the older videos are as important as the videos I do today. You read a few letters from people who have seen what they call the predator entity because it reminded them of the movie character. The one that sticks in my mind is the gentleman that drove out to do some hunting, and when he stepped out of his truck with his sidearm on, he looked across the way and saw it. The entity knew he had seen, it was seen. The man then placed the hand on his gun and the entity saw that, then took off. So let's take the berry picker, the hiker, and the hunter. Now the berry picker's head is not on a swivel. They are focused on the bush, same with most hikers. So this entity waits, watching, and sees the point of separation. He comes up, grabs you, and pulls you through a veil into, let's say, another dimension. You don't scream because you've never saw it. You might make a noise because you were startled, but no one that is in the area hears. Why would that be? Why wouldn't anyone in the area hear if you were screaming? Now the hunter is a little different because he is looking around waiting for his chance to bag what he's hunting for. Maybe those shots that people hear was because the hunter saw the entity, but they weren't quick enough to do any good, and they were also taken. This is done so quickly that you don't realize it, and this is another dimension. It's like the place where you were, except the people you went with are not there. Your campsite is gone. The vehicle you came in is gone. Can you imagine the panic and fear you would feel? You would run around looking but finding nothing. You're running all around yelling for help. You run back and forth, turn up the trail looking for your family or friends. You run to where your car was parked and nothing is there. You might eventually sit down, maybe your feet hurt you, have blisters, etc. You have to take off your shoes to look at your feet and lay them next to you, and you fall back through the veil because they aren't connected to you any longer and are back in time. The same could happen with a coat or other clothing, even a gun. If it's not connected to you, it comes back. Even the weather changes that often. Even weather changes that happen. Could this entity be playing with these people for entertainment? Are studying them to see how they react. So let's make it snow or rain. And weather can cause crossover to the veil. So it's the same weather here. And could the veil be thin in some places that rescuers sometimes hear them shouting for help? So by now you're exhausted, freezing, maybe you're even mentally broken from fear. You die, and because you are dead, your body falls back through the veil. You did not go far from where you were originally missing. Isn't what they tell you when you're lost. Stay in place, and your body then appears in a place that was previously searched. I believe all the other missing are out there. They just went further away from where they disappeared, and a dog could not track because you never left a scent trail in the dimension. The bodies are out there, but will eventually not ever be found because of pure luck. It's if some hunter stumbles upon it. And some people make it back alive. It seems a lot of really young children do. And a child 2 or 3 years old would probably never even realize this happened, so the fear level wouldn't be the same as an adult or even an older child. Interesting. Interesting to say the least. But a couple of things in there I don't quite get. If you yell, somebody should hear you. And in the stories I've cited in the past, where it appeared that somebody was in a portal and calling for help and nobody could see them, well, they could hear you. You couldn't hear the people on land. Or the victim couldn't have heard the people on land. And I surmise that because the people on land never reported an answer to their calling back. Where are you? What happened? Etc. They never hear a response. So maybe it's a one-way conversation. The idea about taking off your shoes. I've heard a lot about shoes over the years. Not sure what the answer is about why they are gone. Fact is, shoes and socks are gone often. Don't know. Next letter. Dear Dave and villagers, the idea of a space-time continuum comes from the groundbreaking work of Albert Einstein. Through the process of developing a special and general theories of relativity, Einstein examined the laws of physics as they related to the speed of light. Another one of the villagers that you quoted from a letter the other day stated that the sound carried through granite much faster than air. You probably remember from your science class in school that the speed of sound is a constant. However, that constant speed is not necessarily the speed at which the sound reaches you. The material which sound is transferred through must be taken into consideration. For example, how does density affect the speed of sound? Since sound waves involve the transfer of kinetic energy between adjacent molecules, The closer those molecules are to each other, the faster the sound travels. Therefore, sound travels much faster through solids than through liquid or gas. When understanding the spread of sound through these different mediums or materials, there are several factors to consider besides density. Sound travels through granite, rock, 10 times faster than it does through air. Granite, when wet, can be measured to have an electrical current traveling through it. Also, granite wicks water up through itself. How does all this apply to missing 411 cases? Let's stop there. Why would we be talking about granite on 411 cases? Because I've stated 100 times that the most granite in the world in any one place is Yosemite National Park. The number one place in the world for missing people, Yosemite National Park. Missing people that fit our profile. And even outside of Yosemite National Park, there's a lot of people that have disappeared on or near or within granite. I'm not sure honestly, but I'm simply thinking of all that we know about our technology and the world around us. Man has been building stone, often granite or marble structures for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I'm convinced that they didn't simply do it out of coincidence, but out of design. For what purpose? I'm not certain. If you think about that, how many monoliths in the world are made of granite? Have you ever heard of hypogeum? Hypogeum of Hal-Stefanini is a Neolithic subterranean structure dating to the Stefanini phase, 300 to 3000 BC in Maltese prehistory. Located in Paola, Malta, it is often simply referred to as hypogeum, literally meaning underground in Greek. It is thought to have been a sanctuary for the necropolis, with the remains of more than 7,000 people documented by archaeologists, and is among the best preserved examples of Maltese temple building culture that has also produced megalithic temples. A residence niche out in the middle chamber called the Oracle Room was possibly designed to project chanting or drumming throughout the rest of the building. It was meant to resonate sound. There are other places that have been discovered with similar or same properties, such as New Grange, which is a 52-year-old passage tomb located in the Boyne Valley in Iceland's ancient east. There is a portion of the site that is said to have sound resonance too. It should be noted that there are many depictions of spirals, such as those depicted in American natives on some of their artwork too. There are those who hypothesize that sound resonance could be used to levitate huge blocks of stone, such as those found at the pyramids of Giza, Mayan and Aztec pyramids, and other World Heritage sites such as these. I could tell you that our military has been experimenting with sound as a weapon for many years, and they have demonstrated that it can be done. In 2015, 2 undergraduate engineering students, Seth Robertson and Viet Tran, created an acoustic fire extinguisher for their senior design project at George Mason University. Initially created to put out small kitchen fires, the acoustic extinguisher quickly went viral. Today, the duo is consulting with RSAC, which licensed their invention with the goal of scaling it to fight large wildfires. That is cool. Something I didn't know. Occasionally, victims can be heard calling out for help, but they simply can't be located. Is it possible that they have been taken through or passed through a portal or wormhole that is transporting them to some other space-time? Who or what might have taken them or set them on this path is unknown to us at this time. Why do victims seem to be taken to the forest as opposed to around others? Although clearly this has happened too, we don't know. A Canadian company has been developing a paper-thin invisibility cloak that can hide people or troops, tanks, and the like for military use for a number of years. They have now applied for patents on this tactical material and technology. The company's name is Hyperstealth, and they say their material hides infrared, ultraviolet, and thermal signals, making it a comprehensive and broadband invisibility cloak. This comes from news reports from the Telegraph, October 17, 2019. It should be noted that there are several other cloaking technologies being developed. A few distinct possibilities are that these could be aliens from other planet or time travelers from unknown space and time. possibly even our own future. We simply don't have enough data and or information to jump to these conclusions yet. So that invisibility cloak, I've seen it depicted before, and it looks like a really thin blanket. And held up in front of you, it looks like you're not even there. It blends in completely with your environment. It's freaky technology, really freaky. But other people have stated that the stories I've quoted in the past where hunters and hikers have seen someone in the woods that has this predator type effect, could it just be the government practicing with their blanket? Suppose it could. But I've also had people in Montana, hunters, see an entity running through a field chasing elk that also had this invisibility cloak effect. And the idea that it knew that, hey Huck, Huck just arrived. She's sniffing my shoe. We'll get a look at her later if she lays down. But the idea that this entity could have known that there was somebody watching it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I kind of doubt that it was a government test, whereas this was probably something real. All right, next letter. Hey Dave, I recognize that this will sound far out there and far-fetched. As you have said though, we need to think outside the box. Yes, we do. I've been a long-time reader of the 14 Times. I've spoke and presented at a 14 conference. Over the years, they have carried lots of articles and stories about scientists and brilliant people vanishing or being killed, suspicious suicides, etc. In your books, you often mention people who fit the description of being brilliant in their field or have great careers ahead of them. To go really left field here, I thought about the beliefs of John Keel and Jacques Vallée, amongst others who have put forward their belief of another dimension, one that has always been there, manipulating humanity. They talk about how these entities and how they can manipulate time and space, basically along the lines of Einstein's theory of relativity. Using that theory led me to think that something is removing these great minds because of an original timeline they served to great purpose, working against whatever it was is taking these people. Maybe they made important discoveries or breakthroughs, and these entities are taking care of them before they get the opportunity. Well, you brought him up, so I'm going to talk about him. Jacques Vallée. Absolutely brilliant man. And right up here, I'm going to show you a book I have that I special ordered a long time ago. Vallée wrote this book, Wonders in the Sky. And it was a special order one time through crowdfunding. I've read almost all the work that Vallée has written. He has always interested me a lot. He's a open-minded thinker. Now, what's coincidental about that is Vallée was one of the board members for National Institute of Discovery of Sciences under Bigelow. Quite a coincidence, isn't it? He's from the San Francisco Bay Area. I wish I could have met him. Never did. I probably am a bottom feeder in his world, so he probably wouldn't have the time to speak with me. But I'd like to talk to him about if his ideas about our world have changed in the last 30 years. And if they have, how? I'd like to see what he had to say. And does he have to experience something to believe it? And I know there's a lot of people in the world that say, well, if I don't see it, I can't believe it. Best example, Bigfoot. Well, if I haven't seen it, then it doesn't exist. And because Valerie has been involved in so many strange and odd research, be the perfect person to ask that question of. Now, John Keel. If you don't know who John Keel is and you're watching this video, you need to do some homework. Keel was way before his time. He wrote about the New Jersey, some incidents in New Jersey, about Mothman. He's a great researcher. And he wrote about things before others would even talk about them. And he did a lot of on-the-ground research, trying to validate what was true and what wasn't. Really a smart investigative journalist. So thanks for bringing them up. Really good people, smart. Next letter. Felt compelled to send you an email, and I hope it finds you well. I had taken a break from YouTube for some time and have been saving your videos for my Watch Later folder on YouTube. A couple weeks ago, I began bringing them back to back, and it feels great to be with the village again. As a member of the law enforcement community, an analyst with the HID TA program, I've always resonated with you in the way you speak. When your videos are watched back to back, an analyst like me cannot help but delve into the causes and other thought-provoking questions that I've briefly described below in my other interesting stories. One comes from the woods and the other comes from a lake. A couple of years ago, I ventured to northern Wisconsin, to the Wausau area, where my friend's family had a couple hundred acres bordering the Wisconsin River. We go up there to assist his grandfather with clearing trees and getting work done, and usually at the end of the night we sit around the campfire drinking and giving each other trouble. Well, it was me and my friend left at the end of the night. It was a crystal clear night sky. There were meteors periodically racing through the horizon. The fire was crackling and I was in good company. All seemed to be right in the world. He began to detail a paranormal experience he had involved a bright light in the sky and time loss a few summers before that. I'm open-minded, listened, but we ended moving on with our night laughing and joking. About an hour later, we were winding down and staring at the fire when it got really quiet around us. Being an outdoorsman and hunter myself, I'm familiar with what the woods should sound like in the nighttime, but it was nearly dead silent. Not a second after my friend and I looked at each other after a blinding split-second flash echoed throughout the forest, leaving us utterly speechless for nearly a half minute. I looked at my friend and just said, "Dude, I think we were just scanned." That's what it felt like to me. Something somewhere was probing the area and seeing what was there. With the proximity to water and other phenomena that have occurred, it makes perfect sense. We weren't necessarily scared, but it was a strange feeling nonetheless. The sounds returned shortly, and there were no more weird flashes. It seemed more than just a light. It seemed as if it was penetrating anything and everything around us. That would freak me out. My second story gets a little stranger, so please stay with me. My father and I were on a boat on the Watoma, Wisconsin My father and I were on a boat in Watoma, Wisconsin on Silver Lake when I was very young, maybe 10 or 12 years old. Our family had a lake house there, and although populated, it felt very distant and quiet. This incident was during the day, though, and we were getting lost in the patience of casting a line and bobber out in the water. It is not uncommon for military aircraft to fly over, as there is a military base relatively close to the location. I remember looking up into the sky on this occasion and observed a military jet performing some maneuvers, when I witnessed a large explosion in the middle of the sky near the aircraft. I was absolutely stunned. My father observed it too. But we didn't see any debris fall down, nor did we see any other craft or hear any noise. The only thing I could think of was that this fighter jet that fired upon something and caused it to blow up. We never did find out what happened. I felt like there's some memory loss associated with this event as well, as it is never a constant in my mind. It is always some odd occurrence that triggers the memory to resurrect itself. I asked my dad the other day if he remembered, and he looked at me quizzically and answered, you know what? I do kind of remember that. And we stared at each other for a bit to try to recall every scrap of detail, but failed. It's odd something so profound didn't withstand the test of time in our minds. There's a lot of strangeness out there, and I feel like having that mystery makes life interesting. Now, working in law enforcement analytics, I have to say I drool at the thought of getting a hold of all your data points from all of your cases and mapping them on an I2 chart, linking them together, just going through and analyzing the heck out of what's finding the patterns. Already did that for you. This would actually be quite simple, as if they were generated on an Excel sheet. I can dream, right? But I digress. Some questions that I had regarding your cases that may have been asked, but I thought I would bring them up anyway. Ask away. What if nature is fighting back against us for all the deforestation and human destruction? Native Americans used to live one with nature, and they have myths and tales, but I'm not sure if they have anything detailing some of the phenomena like this taking place. We started coming in, industrializing, weaving nature around our reality. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that Mother Nature is targeting us in new ways. So, are you implying that Mother Nature is some entity that can retaliate? I'm asking. Number 2, I wonder if the missing are there, but they are lost in time. I'm aware of others wondering about these things, but since sound travels via vibration, I also wonder if the occurrences of people being heard calling out for help can shed some light on this. Are the instances in which people can be heard all male? I wonder this because on a lower male octave is easier to get through whatever realm they occupy. In the instances where somebody has disappeared and the thought has been that they were in a portal or something similar to a portal, it has always been a male. I would love to hear more interviews of people who have been found. How was their life before and how did it change after? I've stated at least 100 times. When I got into this work, I contacted a series of missing persons organizations, and I asked them where the rat holes were in this work. I didn't want to fall into one. I didn't want to replicate a mistake somebody else made. And they said, don't ever go out and interview somebody who's been missing if you're going to use this later on in your work or in a story, because those people will feel as though they're re-victimized again. Now, if those people contact me, that's an entirely different story. Because I'm not that well known, even though some of you think I am, I don't think a lot of people know that our work even exists. How was their life before and how did it change after? Good questions. Maybe there's a fundamental change in the chemistry of the human body that takes place by way that people react to it, can cause memory loss, disorientation, and death, just like the misuse or even the use of some pharmaceutical drugs. Whatever change people go through, whatever reaction they are having to the outside stimuli, causes people to disappear. No cause of death is discernible because the right tests aren't being done. Self-produced GHB could be a side effect of whatever thing is occurring. I don't think it's a side effect because I don't know anybody else out there that had GHB in their system randomly. It had to be administered somehow or initiated by something. What if the granite and water near these disappearances give power to something from the other side? What if our enemies, people we have wronged, or entities that wish to do us harm are able to further manifest themselves due to this exclusive concoction of energy? Alternatively, I've heard stories of pleasant phenomena, life, the bird following you in the forest, and the other light-sided things. Perhaps forces of good come back to remind us they still love us. I found my grandfather dead lying next to his deer stand a few years ago. It was traumatic, and I'm convinced I feel his presence from time to time and odd occurrences in nature. Additionally, I had some musings about mental health coming from the brink of suicide myself at one point in time. What if this mental health crisis results from a distancing ourselves from our normal conscious thoughts? I've recently gotten into meditation and living more consciously and mindfully, and have taken back control of my life. I don't meditate for spirituality, but simply to work through anxiety and depression. It has since become so much more. The more we are in touch with ourselves, the more we are able to see what stimuli affect our moods and behaviors. Social media, TikTok, and other forms of media have taken our awareness away from ourselves and onto the content of those making it. The more we distance ourselves from that stuff, the more we are able to avoid the things that cause a certain negative mindset. It has become so simple to me. Social media shows us other best lives, making us despise our own at times. When you begin meditating and focusing on the self, all desires for self-harm and depression vanishes. Naturally, there are cycles of happiness and sadness, but still, it's like a miracle for me. I sincerely wish you the best, Dave. One day you and your son will meet again. I truly believe that. He watches over you, no doubt about that. I hope to see you speak in person someday, and will undoubtedly be starstruck at the loss of words. You're a man of honor, integrity, patience, and understanding. That much is clear just from your videos. You remind me of my lost grandfather as well. I know I will meet him again someday soon. I'm humbled. Thank you for all those kind words. That was a very thought-provoking letter. And folks, this is the reason I read the letters. If you're here, you understand that. And if you're not here, you don't have the patience to understand why it's meaningful. Frustrating. Next letter. I've enjoyed watching your YouTube channel. I've been working on putting clues of the disappearances of people together based on your reports. Here's what I've pieced together. Your 4 main checklist points. Near rock, often granite, near water, before a change in the weather, found missing shoes. These 4 are all important elements contributing to the disappearances of the people. Let me explain why each of these 4 checklist points are important. Granite is made of quartz, which is made of silicon dioxide. Silicon is a semiconductor. It can either allow electrical current to pass or not, depending on the conditions or by the design of a human controller. In nature, silicon can either allow or not allow electric current to pass, depending on conditions. Water has a negative electrical charge. Body found with shoes removed, this is a critical piece for the flow of electricity. Earth is negatively charged on the surface. Since the beginning of time, many indigenous people groups around the world advise sick people to walk barefoot in the grass, and Earth's energy would help heal the body. In modern society, what do we wear on our feet? Shoes. On the bottom of our shoes, mostly rubber. What is on the bottom of our cars? Rubber. What do we walk on? Concrete. Rubber is an insulator, so our shoes prevent us from receiving the available energy on the surface of the earth. So if our shoes are removed, the human body is able to gain correct with the energy of the earth's surface. 4. A change in weather. A thunderstorm contains 150,000 to 600,000 volts of electricity, and the bottom of the storm near the earth's surface is positively charged. So putting the pieces together with a person's shoes removed, we have a storm with a positive charge and up to 600,000 volts of available energy, water, which carries a negative charge, the earth, which is negatively charged with 7 moles of excess electrons, and granite, which is a semiconductor, which may or may not conduct electricity depending on conditions. Dave, I hope you find these pieces to be useful. And I hope someone in an electrical related field can model the energy path and do predictive modeling on the potential outcome. I sincerely appreciate your work and hope you find peace knowing that both you and your son have touched millions of lives and are making a real difference in this world. Those who understand your work fully support all of your work. Thank you for getting up each day and continuing on this journey. Well, thank you very much. I often hear people say, Dave, Ben's with you. Well, I pray that he is. And there are some days where I need something helping me up to get up. And other days I think I can fly on my own. But I think we all have those days. So, what I want to get into right away is I have 2 extensive missing persons cases for you. And I want you to know that these are important. And I'm going to explain to you why. First case involves this man right here, Richard Jensen. 16 years old when he disappeared December 9th, 1956. He was a Spokane resident, 6 foot 3 inches tall at 16 years old. He was a junior at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane. And he lived with his mom. And he was a cadet in the Civil Air Patrol. And in fact, he won Cadet of the Year in the summer of 1956. He was a very smart young man. And he was a conscientious student. Well, he went duck hunting with his uncle. And they went to Potholes Reservoir. And this is almost in the middle of the state of Washington. Famous duck hunting spot in the region. And he went to a hunting blind with his uncle. They stayed in the blind together for a while, and at 9 o'clock they decided to split up, walk to opposite areas from the blind, meet back at 10 a.m. Now, Richard's a smart kid. If I tell you, hey, you go that way, I'll go this way, and let's meet back here in an hour. How long are you going to continue to walk that way until you turn around? If you got to meet in an hour, you're going to walk out 30 minutes. So at 10 o'clock, his uncle comes back. Richard's not there. So he searches, and he searches for 5 hours, and then gives up, calls a sheriff. And the sheriff searched until dark, which is near 5 o'clock, and then the next day they called out the troops. And they had an Air Force helicopter come out. They had multiple planes from the Civil Air Patrol, and in fact from the same chapter that Richard was a member of. How odd is that? So they requested the Moses Lake chapter of the Civil Air Patrol. So this is Moses Lake, Washington. And every day of the search, his mom was right there searching with him. Richard didn't have a dad. It was just him and his mom. And after a 5-day search of that entire area, which was predominantly scrub brush, they had over 20 members of the local fire department that were dragging the reservoir looking for Richard. There was never any talk of ice on the water. There was never any talk of any broken pieces of ice on the water. And the sheriff made a statement after the 5 days. The statement was, "We dragged all of the area the boy may have fallen." Put that statement in your pocket and don't forget it. Well, the mom stayed and continued to search for another 2 weeks. Had to have been rough because that was her only son, and really that was the only person in her life that lived under the same roof. Well, his mom was super smart, and she saw the flaws that she was experiencing with search and rescue. That being that all the search and rescue people that came to look for her son were all volunteers. And then you had all of the people from the Civil Air Patrol flying their own planes, paying for their own gas, paying for their own maintenance. And she saw that there was a problem. And in March 1957, she made a press release, and she called for the state of Washington to have their own search and rescue group that could respond quickly, efficiently and trained to find missing people. Huck. Hey, Dad's talking here. Huck, this is hilarious. Huck sees her reflection in the glass. It's me. You ding ding. She sees her reflection in the glass. She thinks it's another dog. Hey. That is hilarious. Okay. She's out of the room now. Dogs can be the funniest thing in the world. If you watch their behavior sometimes, it's amazing. So where was it? So the mom is petitioning the state of Washington legislature. This was in March of 1957. And she made big news in the Seattle newspaper. Well, in June of 1957, this is about 7 months after Richard disappeared, 2 fishermen were in the reservoir, and this is Potholes Reservoir, and they were fishing, and they caught something, and they pulled up a dead body. It was 250 yards from shore. It's 2.5 football fields, long ways. And on the body was Richard's ID. Now, what I want you to think about. Remember the statement the sheriff made. We dragged all of the area the boy may have fallen. He discounted that Richard was in the water. So you have a hunter, point of separation. His uncle and he decided to separate and go other directions. Yet they'd been together since 4:30 that morning hunting. Something happened after that point of separation. Water, they're hunting in and around water of the reservoir. And Richard ended up in the water in a place that was previously searched, the same reservoir. So my question, is this just a case of accidental drowning? Or is this a 411 case? But this wasn't a monumental case because things changed after this in the state of Washington. Searches and rescues got more organized. People got more involved. Richard's mom went on a campaign for other missing persons. And the change that she started continues today. I still think that all of the money that is wasted in our government, if a small fraction of that was put into a template that each state could use, where there was a rapid response team of high professionals to search for missing people, a lot more people would be found. And the results in the end would be much more positive. Do I think this is going to happen anytime soon? No. But I can always dream. So yeah, that was Richard Jensen, 16-year-old, very, very smart young man, cadet in the Civil Air Patrol. The ironic part is that the Civil Air Patrol search for him didn't find him. Now, the next story. Pay close attention because it's cumbersome, but it's fascinating. It involves a man named Dick King. He's a pilot. He's 50 years old. It involves a woman named Foresta Wood, unknown age, but she was the mother of another passenger, Valerie Wood, 18 years old, the daughter of Foresta. And they went missing July 27th, 1951, in Alaska. Now, the Woods were related to this man, Dr. Walter Wood, a very famous and wealthy PhD from New Jersey. He was head of the National Geographic Society from 1957 to 1967, a 10-year president. In 1951, he was working for the Arctic Institute of North America on Malaspina Glacier, Alaska, and he was with his son Peter doing an ice study. Peter was on summer break from his studies from college. And they had been working for several weeks, and they were waiting for supplies on Malaspina Glacier. Now, why is the glacier important? Well, I'm going to explain that to you. Hold your taters. So, this is Skagway, Alaska. This is Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory, a place I've been to dozens of times. And this is Malaspina Glacier, right on the Pacific Ocean, right here. Got it? So, doctor's there, PhD, and Dr. Dr. Wood's wife and daughter are being flown to Malaspina Glacier to restock them for supplies by this man, Dick King. Now, Dick just wasn't your average bush pilot in Alaska. He was super smart. He had 20 years of flying experience in some of the harshest conditions Alaska had to offer. He was the most experienced bush pilot for Alaska Airlines and Wien Airlines. He was flying at the time a Norseman aircraft like this with skis. Get the feeling? So, Maurice King, Dick King, is flying the Norseman with Mrs. Wood, their daughter, and supplies to Malaspina Glacier. Now what happened was, the supply plane left Yakutat, Alaska, right here, and it flew over in this area to Seward, Alaska, to a glacier where the Arctic Institute also had another camp. Dropped supplies at Seward Glacier and was headed towards Malaspina Glacier. An easy 19-mile flight. 19 miles. So, the supply plane with the daughter and the mom and Mr. King aboard didn't arrive. 2 weeks later, a U.S. Air Force flight arrives on Malaspina Glacier and evacuates Dr. Wood. Dr. Wood was later interviewed and said he didn't realize that the supply plane was carrying his daughter and his wife. He didn't realize this for several days. But he was a person that flew back and forth between both glaciers. And he said that the Seward Gap, which you have to cross on your way down Malaspina Glacier, had to be searched more. But bad weather inhibited the search and rescue at that point. So, just to give you an overview, this is Seward Glacier. This is the first stop they made from Yakutat. And they supplied a group there. They're flying over to Malaspina to drop the wife, the daughter, and more supplies at Malaspina Glacier. Friends, 19 miles. Now, originally, they thought they were going to find the plane in the gaps somewhere in this area. But then it came out that when King took off, there was a cloud covering, and he was trying to get out of the basin, so he was doing circles, slowly gaining in height, because he didn't want to fly into clouds while it was low. Circle, circle, circle. They don't know what happened. but he didn't arrive. So the Air Force, U.S. Air Force got notified. Canadian Air Force, RCAF, got notified. And they had 30 planes in the sky looking for Mr. King, Maurice King, in the woods. Now, to understand this entire effort, it's really important that you understand the man at the center of all this. Dr. Walter Wood, a geography expert, an explorer, trained mountaineer. He made over 100 ascents of big mountains in 4 continents. He was an expert climber, did a lot of climbing in the Yukon in Canada and Alaska. In 1993, an article came out. Now remember, this disappearance happened in 1951. Well, in 1993, Dr. Wood died at his home in Florida. And in that article, it talked about the family never being found. The same article also said that Dick King had 12,000 hours of flying time. And people that were business associates at the airline said he was the chief pilot. And he knew more about how to fly a plane than cumulatively everybody at their company. So the primary search and rescue focused on the Seward Glacier area. And as I stated, he circled to get away, and that area around the glacier kept expanding and moving towards Malaspina Glacier. Now, over 70 years have transpired since that disappearance. His son, Dr. Wood's son, Peter Wood, went on to college the next year. Dr. Wood eventually went back to New Jersey to take care of his son. There's been many search and rescues over those years looking for the Woods and Maurice King. Never found anything. Now, Foresta King, the wife, had for her entire life traveled with Dr. Wood to the sites where he did his studies and photographed him for periodicals and articles in the National Geographic Society when he was working for them part-time before he became the president. But she was known as someone who traveled the world in support of her husband. Now, why is this important, folks? Because there have been searches in Alaska that have covered thousands of miles. But this search covered 19 nautical miles from point to point. But in reality, it was a lot less than that because nobody ever heard him in the vicinity of the Malaspina Glacier, which really kept him under this upper half area. People said there's no way he was lost. There's no way Maurice King got lost here. Flown it too many times. He was too much of an expert pilot. And the weight of the aircraft was much lighter than when he had flown in and landed at Seward Glacier, which is a really important point. Because a lot of times these pilots overload a plane, and that causes them to not have the number of horsepower they need to, get through a pass or gain altitude. But that wasn't the issue here. He had already unloaded a significant amount of supplies at Seward. Now, looking at this from distance, this is a very remote site out here. I mean, this is Skagway way over here. If you've ever been to Alaska, you kind of understand where it is. But out here, not a lot. But what I do see here, a lot of ocean, a lot of water. A lot of unknowns. Now, he wasn't anywhere near water. So the thought that he went into the ocean never crossed anyone's mind. But with decades, 7 decades of receding glaciers supposedly in the world, you'd think by now someone would have found Maurice King's plane. But they didn't. Now, somebody may have heard me say, oh, his name was Dick King. Well, that was the nickname all the friends called Maurice King, Dick. Now, later in life, Dr. Wood became the head of the National Geographic Society. And he ended up getting remarried years later. And when he died in Florida, his second wife was with him. But to live with the unknown, you lose your daughter, who's 18. You lose your wife, who's been your partner for over 20 years. On a lonely strip of snow in the middle of nowhere. How does that happen? Nobody hears anything. Nobody sees anything. Nobody finds anything. And friends, I call that very odd. Now, this is one of those stories that's a newer study. It isn't even in Missing 411 Law. But it fits all the rest of the stories that I've written about in law. Land, air, water. And if you really think about those 3 words, it fits for that disappearance. So, I'm going to say that I greatly appreciate you being here. If you're new to this, then please be patient because you got a lot of catching up to do. If you're one of my loyal followers that I'm grateful to have, thank you. My numbers are being controlled by YouTube. If you look at the thumbs up and the percentage of people giving me a thumbs up and liking the video, on Missing People specifically, they've gone way down. And I've had hundreds of people tell me that they cannot give me a thumbs up. It doesn't show up. Or they say that they hit it and it won't go on. Or they give me one and they come back days later and it's not a thumbs up that they've given. That's manipulation of analytics. And unfortunately, I am still looking very hard on leaving. And I know I have to leave. And I know from other people who have left YouTube, the numbers go up drastically after they leave. I have no doubt that mine will as well. Many of you have stated that you get odd correspondence from YouTube asking if you really like the channel, etc. Well, again, doesn't surprise me. They're looking for some excuse to take me off the platform. But I'm still here, and I'm still talking about missing people. Carry a personal locator beacon everywhere you go, everywhere you travel. Put it in your car, leave it in your car. When you get out and hike, take it with you. Every year, change the battery in that thing. It's important. And tell someone where you're going, when you're coming out, and if they don't hear from you, to call, search, and rescue. Period. And lastly, I say this about once a month. If you're an able-bodied person and you're in decent shape, call your local county search and rescue and tell them that you want to become an active member. And they're probably going to direct you to courses that you need to take about how to become a certified search and rescue member. All of the pricing and time is on your shoulders. You're not going to get any help. This is for the love of your society and your city and your public. It's one of those things you'll do and you'll feel great about it because you're helping others in a time of great need. Almost every search and rescue organization in North America needs volunteers right now. Most of the volunteers are older Americans. Most of them are retired because they can spend the time doing the training and doing the searching. As an example, if you only have, say, 10 people that represent a county search and rescue team, and somebody goes missing, how long before those 10 people are completely burned out from searching? Is it 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days? Every day getting up and going out? Who's feeding their dogs? Who's feeding their animals? Who's making their lunches? Who's taking care of their house? A lot of questions. And that's why many times you see it, this 7-day cycle on search and rescue, they have to stop because they don't have the manpower to keep going, man or lady power to keep going. That's why they need more people like you. So don't be bashful about calling and stepping into the arena. You'll meet a lot of great people who think like you and I. So anyhow, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Below the description of this video, you're going to see all the links to my missing people documentaries, Missing 411, Missing 411, The Hunted, and Vanished, and all the books I've written about missing people. I'm humbled that you're here. Please try to do something nice for somebody in your neighborhood this week. Something nice. It'll resonate in your heart. Have a great week. Paulides out.